Here are 5 stories of the supernatural, as recounted by police officers. Are they truth or just scare? Enjoy. Number 1. A few years back, I worked security at a hospital. It sounded cool, and it was, except for the fact that the shift was from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. I worked alone, and did I mention, the hospital I guarded was abandoned. I was always a third shift kind of person. I didn't get the night jitters or scare easily. But this place could do it to the best of them. Every night I would walk the halls that were supposed to be empty and unused. And every night I would end up having to close doors that I had previously shut and then relock them. I would stroll along the corridors of one floor, and after I made my rounds, I would move up to the next floor, and so on. Once, I have to admit, I did get a little shaky when an hour after already walking and checking a hallway, I had circled back around to find the lights back on and all the doors opened. I would then repeat the process of having to turn off the same hall lights and closing the same doors again. On other nights, I'd hear footsteps on the floor above me, the sounds of doors opening and closing, the elevators moving from floor to floor, phones ringing, nurse call lights going on, etc. There were only 3 times I got the "I hate this shit" feeling. The first time I was checking offices on the 4th floor. There was a light on in a locked hallway. No surprise. This hallway hadn't been renovated since the place was built, so everything was from the 1920s. I'd unlock the door, flip the lights, walk out, relock the door, and turn to leave. Then, behind me, I'd hear the flip of a light switch. Through the frosted glass, I saw the lights were back on. Exasperated, I left the hallway alone the rest of the night. The second time, I was taking an elevator to the top floor. When the elevator was between the 4th and 5th floors, I heard laughing and muffled talking. It kept getting louder as I got higher. When I reached the 5th floor, the door swung open, and absolute silence. Of course, every light was on, even in the patients' rooms. I checked high and low and did not find a single living, breathing person in that entire place, except for me. The third instance, the scariest of all of them, happened on an average night. I'm on the lower level, locking a door in a corridor. The door had a glass middle, but on the backside it was covered by white tape. The room it led to was dark, and the hallway a few feet behind me was partially lit, so the glass acted like a perfect mirror. Everything was normal. I inserted the key, the lock clicked, and as I reached out to turn the handle, I saw the full outline of a person walk past me in the hallway. Clear as day, just a full shadow of a person walking past in the reflection of the glass. I froze for only about a second, and then ran into the hall after this supposed person, but there was no one there. Just silence. Number 2. This story takes place around 2 to 3 a.m. in the morning. I was sitting in my patrol car on top of a flat hill monitoring traffic. Where I was parked is a well-known spot where a victim of an unsolved murder was found over 30 years ago. No other officers would sit there, even though people are constantly going 15 to 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. I was sitting in that spot that early morning when I saw what appeared to be a shadow dart across the back of my unit as my eyes caught movement from the rearview mirror. Almost immediately, I saw the shadow coming up around to the driver's side. Mind you, it was completely dark in that area, and the only lighting around me was from the moon. Thinking the worst, I quickly flipped on all of the lights to see if who or what was around me. Nothing. I figured it was time to leave. Once I got to a well-lit area, I stopped and realized that my camera was recording from when I turned on my emergency lights. I reviewed the footage, and you could see where the figure was moving from the driver's side of my unit to the front. Then just for half a second, right when the figure would be in full view of the camera, the video went black, almost as if someone had put their finger over the lens. Then it went back to normal. Needless to say, I have never gone back to sit in that spot. Number 3. I used to work for a private police security firm as a patrol supervisor. On one of my patrol routes, there was a huge church that was also a private daycare and kindergarten during the day. There had been many instances of workers arriving to the church and finding the doors left wide open. So it was my responsibility to drive to the church and clear and secure the building in the very early hours between 3 and 4 a.m. In the early 1900s, the building was a schoolhouse and supposedly a fire killed several children trapped inside. I didn't know any of this prior to working for the company, and several extremely creepy things happened while I was at the church. On my first night there, I had just walked down the very long main classroom hallway to clear all of the rooms, and when I turned around to walk back up the hallway, there was a red balloon floating in the middle of the hall that was definitely not there before. In the front room that used to be the old pastor's office, there was a lamp shaped like a lighthouse that sat on a table next to a large window. When I would pull up to the church, the lamp would be the first thing I would see in the office window, and it was always turned on. However, after I finished my rounds, I would go and check the pastor's office from the inside, and the lamp was always off. I would lock up the office, and when I got back into my patrol car to leave, the lamp was on again. There was also the usual phenomena of me previously closing and locking doors, to then being found open just seconds after I closed and locked them. One time I had another officer that filled in for me one evening. He reported that as he was checking the main chapel, the pipe organ started playing by itself. Needless to say, he quit the very next day. Number 4. This story starts when I was on patrol with my partner. We were doing our usual nightly rounds when dispatch came over the radio and asked for an officer to respond to an alarm call. The location was an old office building that had recently been converted into doctor's offices, along with a pharmacy attached. Dispatch had received a motion signal alarm from one of the offices upstairs. We pulled up to the building but were unable to enter, so we waited for the key holder to arrive on scene. He showed up and unlocked the door, and we headed inside to secure the building. The door to the stairwell was locked, and the key holder did not have the proper key to unlock it, so we had to take the elevator up to the second floor. I know what you're thinking. It's not the most tactically sound option, but we had no choice. We heard the ding of the elevator as it reached the second floor. The doors opened, and we were greeted to a pitch-black hallway, except for one overhead light at the end of the hall. We walked down the hallway, slowly and methodically checking all the doors, and so far all had been secured. We made our way to the last office, and sure enough, the door was unlocked. We made entry and observed it to be an unused office. It had a sizable waiting room and reception area. Also, there were about 10 to 12 exam rooms on this floor, and we ended up clearing all of them with no hiccups. We exited the office and immediately, something seemed off. That's when I realized the overhead light at our end of the hallway was now off and was replaced by the elevator light at the opposite end. I looked over at my partner and his complexion had gone completely white. I asked him, "What's wrong? Weren't all the doors we just checked closed and locked?" "Yeah, so? Well, now they're all open." Sure enough, all the office's doors were now open. A feeling of dread washed over me. We slowly headed back down the hallway, once again clearing and securing the offices. On our way out, just before we turned the corner into the waiting area, the main door just slammed shut. Then our radio started going haywire with some kind of static feedback. Now, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. We got back in the elevator and headed down to the first floor to make contact with the key holder again. However, he's nowhere to be found. I contacted dispatch and requested a callback number for the key holder so I could advise him of what we found. Dispatch stated that the key holder was still en route and was advising an ETA of 5 minutes. Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. I slowly tilted my head, pressed the radio button on my shoulder, and advised Dispatch that we had already been out here with the key holder. Dispatch requested I give them a call. I called and was told that there was no way we were out here with him. She stated that the alarm company had just now made contact with one. The real key holder finally arrived on scene. I asked her about the man that had just let us into the building. She asked me to describe him to her, and I did. She said that it sounded like the doctor that used to lease out an office on the second floor at the end of the hallway. My blood ran cold as she told us that he had just committed suicide at his summer home several days ago. This call has stayed with me, and it's one I'll never forget. And to this day, I have never gone back. Number 5. I was on duty at the front desk of our office one night when I received a call from an elderly man in a village a few miles away. He was very short of breath and wanted me to give him the number of a local doctor. I didn't have the number on hand, so I told him just a moment and put the phone down while I looked it up. When I picked up the phone again, I could tell the line was still open, but I couldn't hear anything. I shouted into the phone, telling the man to make any sort of noise if he could hear me, but I got nothing. I contacted the control room on another line and got them to trace the call. I needed to send help to the man whom I was convinced had collapsed and was dying. The number was traced and the local cops went to the address, which they recognized as the scene of a sudden death, just 3 weeks before. The sole occupant of the house had died of a respiratory illness, and the house was empty and vacant on their arrival. It would seem that I had received a call from beyond the grave, and that's why I don't answer the phone anymore. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time.